When I started this podcast a couple of years ago, 100 episodes was kind of like, I would never get there. Yet, here we are. This is episode 100. I've officially recorded 100 of these podcast episodes. I thank you for people who've been listening from the very beginning. And with that, let's dive into it. So there is a new breast implant on the market that has been all the rage on social media. You've probably seen it. It's called Motiva. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what it's about. Is it really worth it, or is it just a gimmick? Welcome to the Trillium Show. My name is Dr. Jason Hall. I am the host of the Trillium Show podcast and author of the book, The Art of Aging. You can pick that up on Amazon, where we break down some of the myths, some of the tricks, and some of the downright misconceptions about cosmetic treatments, cosmetic medicine, and even dive a little bit into surgery. So today we're going to talk about the newest breast implant on the market called Motiva. If you've been paying attention on social media, you've probably seen advertisements. You've probably seen influencers talking about these new breast implants. So today we're going to talk about what they are, what they claim to do, and kind of what to watch out for. So breast implants have been around since the late 60s. And the first implants were silicone implants, obviously. There were lots of problems with those. The silicone implant ended up being pulled off the market in the 1990s based on kind of dubious claims of autoimmune problems. If that sounds familiar, it's because it is, which were subsequently debunked. They were, after over a decade of study by our societies, by implant manufacturers, they came to realize that there aren't autoimmune problems that are a result of silicone leaking out into the body. During that time, all we had was saline. That kind of left two of the major players in the implant market still around, Mentor and Allergan. Those companies have changed names over the years. That's what they're known as right now. There have been other implant manufacturers that have come and gone. Sientra comes to mind. And now we have a new implant on the market, which is arguably one of the newer implants that has been introduced in the last 10 years. It's called Motiva. It's made by Establishment Labs, and it claims to be a better implant than any of the other implants on the market. So today we're going to talk about why. And there are really three claims that Motiva makes that sets it apart from other breast implants that are out, other silicone breast implants that are out in the market. And it's important to know these are silicone implants. They're not saline. Silicone is the most widely used type of breast implant on the planet, certainly in the United States, certainly by me. So what makes these things special? There are really three things that they tout. One is that they look cool. They're this kind of fuzzy looking purple, light purple implant. And they're right. Their implant looks cool. We'll talk about it in a second. The second thing is that you don't need to remember your implant card. So women, if you've had breast implants, you get this little card with like your surgeon's name and the size and the date that they put them in and all that. Well, Motiva has figured out a way around that. If you've ever microchipped your dog, it's essentially the same thing. You can get as an option a little RFID tracker that's built into your implant so that your surgeon, when you show up for a revision later, and they say, well, what kind of implant do you have? What size implant do you have? And you say, I don't know. They say, well, let me see your card. I lost it. It's been 8, 10, 15, 20 years. Your surgeon can run a little RFID checker over your implants, and it'll give them all of that information. You can think about that what you want to. In my book, an implantable tracker is going a little bit too far. No thanks. The third thing that really sets them apart, and really what they're using to sell to both doctors and to patients now, is that the incidence of capsular contracture with Motiva implants, they tout as being near zero. And you think, well, what, how, why? That's certainly what I thought when I heard it. And it comes down to their engineering, to kind of how they make these things. Now, if you've done any implant research, you know that there are two main types of implant shells. So the covering that's on the outside of the implant. There are smooth implant shells and there are textured implant shells. A little bit of the history behind them. The textured implant shell was designed and was conceived back in the 1980s to lower the incidence of capsular contracture and is based on an implant shell that is no longer used, which is a polyurethane implant. They're actually polyurethane foam implants. And while those aren't used, what they saw with those implants is that the incidence of capsular contracture was almost non-existent. So all of these textured implants were then conceived to kind of mimic the outside of a polyurethane implant by having little ridges. You can feel them. If you feel one of these implants, you can see them under a microscope. A little break. What is capsular contracture? So any implant that's put in your body tries to protect itself from whatever that is because they think your body thinks it's dangerous. So it forms a kind of a wall of scar tissue around that implant. Now, a knee implant, a hip implant, not that big a deal. It's always moving and it's rigid. It's a firm, bone-like implant. So not much is going to happen to that. In a breast implant, obviously, is squishy and moves around. So a scar capsule around that, if that scar capsule continues, your body continues to lay down scar around that implant can be deformed, sit up high, and can end up becoming painful, becoming hard as a rock. I'm sure you've seen it if you've been at the beach and seen women who've had implants for a long time. They look round and don't move. That's capsular contracture. And so we want to prevent that. How big a problem capsular contracture is varies. With round, smooth implants, which is the most common type of implant that's used in the United States, the incidence of capsular contracture is about 6%. So 6 out of every 100 women are going to develop a capsular contracture that becomes a problem requiring reoperation. What Motiva is trying to do with their implant is reduce that rate of capsular contracture. And according to their pre-market studies, their FDA approval studies, which were released in 2024, they've done it. They've designed an implant that forms very little scar capsule around it, and they've lowered their capsular contracture rate based on 1 or 2 studies to about 1%. So instead of 6 of 100, your chance is 1 in 100. That's pretty nice, but there's a but. And the big question that we have yet to answer, because these implants are new, is a capsule that isn't a problem? That's where you really have to look at the data and look at the results of the scientific trials, the very few scientific trials that have been published to date on these things, and kind of dig into that. Capsular contracture for these implants hasn't seemed to be a problem. What has been a problem is what we call implant malposition. So that implant ending up in a place we didn't put it, mainly down on your abdomen or out in your armpit. If an implant ends up down there, that buys you another operation. The theory right now is that because these implants are engineered not to form much of a capsule, implant position change over time is a real problem. And in their studies, 50%, over 50%, 54% of patients who had these implants put in have had problems with implant malposition. It's been such a problem with these that the company is actually now recommending that surgeons who put this implant in reinforce the breast crease, which is what gives way with these implants when a capsule doesn't form, with what we call a 4-layer closure. So adding an extra row or 2 of stitches on the inside to help support that implant. Now, surgeons have been doing this to reinforce implant creases for years. It doesn't work very well. And so we don't know right now whether long-term implant malposition with these implants is going to be a problem or not. But what a lot of surgeons who use this device have been doing is adding an internal bra. So a dissolving mesh support to those implants to help prevent that malposition. Now, okay, that's great. So they've got, low capsular contracture rate, which nobody wants. And these surgeons that are using this seem to have found a way around it by adding an internal bra. The problem is that adds cost, that adds time to your surgery, and that adds a second device that's implanted in your body. What happens to that long term? We don't know. Does it solve the problem long term? We don't know yet. So there's lots of unknowns when it comes to this new device, that if you're looking to get a breast implant and you choose a Motiva implant, you kind of have to realize you're still part of our early experience in the United States with these, and we can't really predict what's going to happen long term. So are the implants good or bad? Don't know. They have some promising early data behind them, but what I've found in 15 years of practice is that you don't want to be the last person to use a new technology. You also don't want to be the first. So personally, you ask me, what am I going to do? Am I using these or not? The answer is absolutely not. I've been using the same implants for a decade. I get great results with them. My patients are happy. The capsular contracture rate is well below 6% in my experience. And so the Motiva implant solves a problem that my patients really aren't having a problem with. And introducing a new variable, that of implant malposition, isn't something I'm willing to risk for you, the patient, right now. So stay tuned. We'll see how these implants perform in the long term, but they certainly I'll give them that. They look cool. I'll save you the implanted tracker for now, and we'll just kind of see what happens with these. So if you've got any questions, you can always reach out, DM me on Instagram at Dr. Jason Hall. You can shoot me an email, info@drjasonhall.com. If you got any suggestions for future shows, love to hear them. Thanks for listening to episode 100. We'll see you next time.